For 10 years, the sector-wide approach has been the organizing principle of Dutch development cooperation. In this movie, members of Cordaid, SNV and ICCO shed a light on their experiences and views in relation to the sector-wide approach and capacity building. What is the practical implication of the sector-wide approach on your work and that of your organization?
The practical implications for our work have been big. And in fact, our own change around the year 2000 from project implementation to capacity development services has been partially inspired by the same wave of thinking on the New Age architecture, as it was called.
So for us, the whole issue of ownership and how broadly based and how democratically legitimate is the ownership is for us a very important question. That's something that the organizations that Cordaid work with in the different countries always would like to address, or are addressing in trying to open up spaces within governments to have an influence, to have a voice in what are the priorities of the different sectors that we work in.
We recognize that at this moment in time, development processes are becoming ever more complex, need the involvement of actors at different levels, multi-level, multi-stakeholder, and that is why we have chosen for what we call the programmatic approach. And the essence of a programmatic approach is that we invite organizations that have a stake in a certain problematic, be it health, be it local markets, be it international markets, be it human rights, that those organizations start working together and recognize the additional value that each of them brings to that cooperation.
What are the challenges of supporting sector programs and capacity building?
But it's very important that it's not only capacity development which takes place on a higher level or on a national level or on levels of, but that it also reaches a more local level. It should be on all the levels which are important.
Most organizations have gone through stages of organizational development, but to bring it up to a level of it being able to contribute to institutional changes, organizations need to work together. So that capacity to work together effectively is one of the main challenges that we see. I think one of the main problems that embassies and the ministry and governments are facing with the sector approach is that they lack information about what the effect of the policies at the sector level is on the level of citizens. And I think that one of the opportunities that we might have to offer is to connect as embassies and maybe ministries much better to programs that we are doing or promoting with civil society actors that have a relation to that sector.
In capacity development and sector programs, often planning realities play a dominant role. We feel there is often a big need and also a big possible gain by having much more real-life cases, action learning, evidence coming from the lower levels in the sector. And that also links to our experience that actual success in achieving scale is not so much done vertically, but by horizontal spreading of effective local solutions.
Which competences are needed to effectively support a sector program?
The competences that are needed, and also if we look at how Cordaid itself is working, it requires something which is more, you have to be able to think more multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder. So you have to be much more aware of how different stakeholders operate, what their interests are, what drives the change, what are the dynamics of change that you are involved in. So you have to be more process oriented. You have to take care that you have to work in situations that are much more uncertain, because when you have a project it's very detailed. This is the project, this is what you're going to do. When you are more in this type of open processes where different stakeholders and also political processes are very important, then you have to have a much more open mind. You have to see what are the opportunities, what are the threats. You have to constantly evaluate the steps that you need to take and see if they're effective or not.
On competencies that people need to actually work with a sector approach, I think one of the main challenges is to help people understand, as it were, the value chain, the different players that play a role, and those are government, private sector, civic actors, and each of them have their own roles, their own energies, and also their own drivers in that system. And for example, the recent work on accountability is important in that respect, and drives people to think beyond the performance of individual organizations. In our contribution to Rich Menu for the Poor, we also discussed the case of the health sector in Mali. It's a nice illustration of the problems that can occur when a sector program and the decentralization policy or logic of a country do not match well. And those problems occur especially at the local level. A ministry can still hold its own space and create its own reality, but local district officers, health associations, health posts had to deal with, for example, two parallel planning systems, two parallel sets of priorities, and that created enormous complications in realizing the sector program.
In developing sector programs, all partners, including donors, tend to overestimate the existing capacities in relation to the envisaged change.
Yeah, I also don't think that we overestimate the existing capacities as donors. I think we rather have a tendency to underestimate the existing capacities, and that's also why we don't have a development system that is based on trust, because we might not think that we can already trust our partners in the South. And so that's also what is leading to these increasing control systems. Because if you don't trust, then you need to control.